Hey guys, tonight we dive into the shadowy corners of ancient Rome, uncovering the shocking practice of live burials for the Vestal virgins, those enigmatic women tasked with guarding the city's sacred flame, only to face a fate sealed in darkness if they strayed. Picture yourself wandering the cobblestone paths of the Forum, the warm sun dipping low, casting long shadows over marble temples, while the distant hum of crowds and the scent of roasting meats fill the air. But beneath it all lingers a chill whisper of rituals gone wrong, where purity demanded the ultimate price. You probably won't believe the terrifying truth of this story, how a vow of chastity could lead to being entombed alive, left with just enough provisions to prolong the agony without the gods getting their hands dirty. So before you continue listening to my story, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel so I know you're still listening along with me. You trudge along the dusty vias of ancient Rome, your sandals kicking up fine particles that dance in the golden haze of a late afternoon sun, the kind that makes everything feel alive yet timeless, like you're stepping into a living painting. The air buzzes with the chatter of merchants haggling over amphorae of olive oil, the clang of blacksmiths hammering away, and the occasional whinny of horses pulling chariots through the throng. It's chaotic, sure, but there's an order to it all: togas swirling in white waves, slaves scurrying with bundles, and patricians striding with that air of quiet command. You weave through the crowd, your senses overwhelmed by the earthy aroma of fresh-baked bread mingling with the sharp tang of incense from nearby altars, a reminder that the gods are always watching, always demanding. As you approach the heart of the Forum Romanum, the pulse of the city intensifies. There, nestled among grand basilicas and triumphant arches, stands the Temple of Vesta, its circular form evoking the humble huts of Rome's legendary founders, a simple yet profound symbol of the city's eternal hearth. But your eyes are drawn to the adjacent complex, the Atrium Vesta, the home of the Vestal virgins themselves. It's not just any house. It's a sprawling enclave of purity and power, where marble columns rise gracefully around open courtyards, gardens bloom with herbs sacred to the goddess, and statues of former virgins gaze down with serene, unblinking eyes. You pause at the threshold, feeling the cool breeze slip through the porticos, carrying faint echoes of chants and the crackle of flames from within. This place embodies social purity like no other, a living testament to how Romans wove their identities into the very stones of their dwellings, projecting an image of untainted virtue that sustained the empire's soul. You imagine slipping inside, though in reality, few outsiders ever did. The Atrium Vesta was a world apart, reserved for these 6 chosen women who represented the ideal of Roman chastity. Selected from noble families between the ages of 6 and 10, they committed to 30 years of service, tending the sacred fire of Vesta that must never extinguish, for it symbolized the life force of Rome itself. That's the mainstream historical fact. Without that flame, the city believed its fortunes would flicker out. So these virgins became the guardians of continuity, their daily rituals a blend of domestic duty and divine mandate. It's like they were the ultimate homemakers for an entire civilization, keeping the hearth alight while the emperors conquered worlds. But here's a quirky tidbit that might make you smirk: these girls enjoyed perks that would make modern influencers jealous. They could own property in their own name, ride in carriages through the city, and even pardon condemned criminals if they crossed paths by chance. Yet, after their service, when they could finally marry, most chose not to. Perhaps 3 decades of celibate fame spoiled them for ordinary life. Or maybe they just preferred the quiet hum of independence over some Roman dude's ego. You chuckle softly to yourself, thinking how it's kind of like joining a sorority with eternal vows, all the sisterhood drama, but with gods as your raw, enforcing rules that could literally bury you if broken. As you linger near the entrance, envisioning the layout inspired by traditional Roman domus yet elevated for their unique role, the architecture whispers tales of social separation. The multiple atria and enclosed peristyles created layers of seclusion, with private baths and sleeping quarters shielded from the outside world. ensuring their purity remained intact. Scholars often debate whether this design truly enforced isolation to safeguard their sacred status, or subtly allowed glimpses of the community, fostering a sense of elevated identity where the virgins were both apart from and integral to Roman society. Their home a mirror of the empire's conflicted soul, domestic yet divine, private yet profoundly public. You feel a gentle pull, as if the stones themselves invite you deeper, the fading light painting the walls in soft amber tones that soothe your wandering thoughts. Modern aside, it's wild how this setup parallels today's gated communities, where status is all about what you keep out. But back then, it was about preserving a flame that could doom an empire if neglected. You think your 9 to 5 is pressure. Try being a preteen responsible for cosmic fire safety. One puff of wind and poof, Rome's vibe is ruined. The sarcasm creeps in gently, because nothing screams relaxing lifestyle like vowing away your youth to a goddess who punishes slip-ups with creative cruelty. Wandering the imaginary corridors, you sense the weight of history in every column. How the atrium Vestal wasn't just bricks and mortar but a canvas for social identity, as explored in depths of Roman architectural studies. Here, the virgins' chastity wasn't personal, it was communal, their home designed to project an aura of inviolable purity that bolstered Rome's self-image as eternal and uncorrupted. Sensory details envelop you, the faint rustle of linen robes, the warmth of sunlight on mosaic floors depicting mythical scenes, the subtle fragrance of laurel leaves burned in offerings. It's hypnotic, almost ASMR-like, the way the space hums with quiet reverence, lulling you into a trance where past and present blur. But beneath that calm facade lurks the shadow of consequence, a reminder that this purity came at a cost. You glance toward the temple's eternal flame flickering steadily, and wonder about the women who live here, their lives a delicate balance of honor and hazard. Like joke incoming, if social media existed back then, their posts would be all day 10,947, still keeping Rome lit Vestal vibes, but with 0 likes from potential suitors. The gentle sarcasm eases the tension, like a whisper in the dusk, as you settle into the narrative's flow, the city's sounds fading into a soothing backdrop. As the evening deepens, you find yourself drawn further, the atrium's grandeur unfolding like a dream, its architecture a subtle enforcer of roles. Historians note how such houses, with their open yet controlled spaces, reflected broader Roman ideals, where identity was tied to visibility seen but untouchable. Much like the virgins themselves. Another quirky aside, rumor has it some virgins brewed potions from the garden herbs, not for magic, but for staying alert during those endless night watches. Caffeine before it was cool, or just herbal desperation. The debate lingers among experts. Did this seclusion empower them as symbols of strength or trap them in a gilded cage of societal expectations? You exhale slowly, the story's cadence slowing your breath, inviting you to linger in this ancient world a bit longer, where every stone holds a secret, every shadow a story of purity preserved at all costs. You draw nearer to the inner chambers of the atrium Vesta, the soft echo of your imagined footsteps on the polished marble floors guiding you deeper into this sanctuary of secrets, where the air grows thicker with the scent of smoldering myrrh and the faint, rhythmic chants of women bound by unbreakable oaths. The twilight deepens outside, casting elongated shadows that dance like silent guardians across the walls adorned with frescoes of Vesta herself, her veiled form a perpetual reminder of the vows that define this place. You feel the pull of commitment, as if the stones whisper invitations to join in the ritual, to step into the shoes of a young girl on the cusp of a life-altering promise, her small hands trembling slightly as she faces the high priest, the Pontifex Maximus, ready to seal her fate for the good of Rome. In this moment, you stand beside her, a wide-eyed initiate perhaps no older than 10, selected for your noble blood and unblemished purity. As the ceremony unfolds in the temple's glow, the flame crackles softly in its bronze brazier, casting warm flickers on the faces around you. Stern senators in their togas, veiled matrons murmuring prayers, and the other virgins, their expressions a mix of solemnity and subtle envy for the newcomer. You raise your voice with hers, the words tumbling out in Latin that feels both foreign and familiar. I vow to thee, Vesta, chastity unbroken for 30 years, to guard thy fire eternal. It's a pledge not just of body but of soul, a surrender to a life where personal desires fade into the collective identity of the city. Their home a fortress of social separation that amplifies the gravity of every syllable. As the oath settles over you like a silken shroud, the consequences loom large, etched into the very architecture of the atrium, where private alcoves hide from view but never from accountability. Break this vow, and the punishment is swift and severe, not a simple execution, but something far more insidious, designed to appease the gods without spilling sacred blood directly. That's the mainstream historical fact. The Romans believed that killing a Vestal outright would invoke divine wrath, so they devised live burial, entombing the offender alive in an underground chamber with meager provisions, allowing her to waste away without the state bearing the guilt of her death. It's a loophole in piety, a way to maintain the facade of mercy while enforcing terror, ensuring the flame's purity mirrored the empire's unyielding moral code. You sense the weight of it now, your pulse quickening faintly as you envision the dread that must have accompanied those words, the oath binding you to isolation amid luxury. The atrium's gardens rustle gently in the evening breeze, lavender and rosemary releasing their calming scents, yet beneath it all thrums an undercurrent of tension, like a string pulled to taut. Modern aside, it's reminiscent of those viral challenges where people swear off social media for a month, except here, it's 3 decades without romance, and failing means more than just FOMO, it's eternal infamy. You smirk softly, thinking how the virgins probably had the ancient equivalent of group therapy sessions, whispering about cute gladiators they'd never meet because, hey, vows are vows. But hormones are eternal jokers. Wandering these halls in your mind's eye, you touch the cool surface of a column, feeling the carved flutes under your fingers, a tactile link to the women who once leaned here, pondering their eternal commitment. Quirky tidbit time. Some accounts suggest that the virgins occasionally received gifts from admirers, not flowers or chocolates, but exotic birds or rare scrolls, tokens of forbidden affection that they had to ritually burn, turning potential romance into literal smoke signals of denial. It's almost comical, imagining you unwrapping a parrot that's squawking compliments, only to send it up in flames. Talk about a hot date gone wrong, right? The gentle humor eases the narrative's grip, like a lull in a bedtime tale, inviting you to breathe slower, the story's ASMR whispers softening the edges. Yet, as the night air cools, carrying distant echoes of the tabu's murmur, you contemplate the scholarly debates that persist. Did this vow truly safeguard the virgins' elevated social identity, empowering them as autonomous figures in a male-centric world, or did it merely commodify their bodies as vessels for Rome's ideological purity, stripping them of true choice under the guise of honor? Experts argue over inscriptions and house layouts in works like those examining Roman domestic spaces, questioning if the atrium's grandeur masked a prison of expectations, where commitment blurred into caution. You linger in that question, the fading chants lulling you further, as if the oath itself were a spell weaving through the dusk. Sensory immersion deepens, the soft flicker of oil lamps igniting one by one, their light pooling like liquid gold on the mosaic depictions of faithful guardians. The subtle chill seeping from stone benches where virgins might have sat in contemplation, weighing the gravity of their words against youthful winds. It's hypnotic, this blend of duty and dread, where a simple pledge could elevate you to near goddess status or doom you to the earth's cold embrace. As you pledge alongside them in this imagined rite, the consequences feel palpably close, the atrium's walls closing in just a touch, not oppressively but protectively, shielding secrets that could unravel empires. Light sarcasm slips in, because nothing says empowering career choice like signing up for a job where HR's solution to misconduct is a one-way ticket. Underground perks include free bread and the lamp, though. You chuckle inwardly, the sound fading into the narrative's soothing cadence as the commitment solidifies, binding you to the Virgin's world. Deeper still, you explore the layers of this vow, how it intertwined with the house's design, open courtyards symbolizing transparency, yet enclosed rooms enforcing solitude, architectural echo of the oath's dual nature. Historians weave tales of how such pledges reinforced social hierarchies. The Virgin's purity a cornerstone of Roman identity, their home a microcosm of the city's soul. Another light joke bubbles up. If modern vows were this intense, wedding rings would come with estate clauses, but for Vestals, it was all in, no take-backs, making till death do us part seem positively casual. As the stars begin to dot the sky above the atrium, visible through the open roof of the atrium, you feel the oath's resonance, a gentle pull toward understanding the grave ties that link chastity to consequence. The quirky fringe adds color. Whispers in lesser-known annals hint at virgins who allegedly communicated with Vesta through interpretive smoke readings from the fire, not prophecy, but a fringe practice blending faith with fancy, perhaps to cope with the eternal weight. Scholars continue to debate if these rituals were genuine spiritual dialogues or invented traditions to bolster their mystique, as explored in studies of Roman social spaces. Leaving the ambiguity hanging like incense in the air, you relax into it, the stories flow carrying you onward, breaths deepening as the ancient commitment unfolds in hushed tones. You drift further into the embrace of the atrium Vesta, the oath's echoes fading like distant thunder as the starlit sky above the open courtyard blankets everything in a velvety hush. The cool night air brushing your skin with whispers of lavender from the gardens, inviting you to explore the halls where identity and architecture intertwine like vines on ancient trellises. The oil lamps flicker softly now, their golden pools illuminating intricate mosaics, underfoot patterns of interlocking keys, and flames that symbolize the Virgin's role as keepers of Rome's secrets. Each tile a step into a world where personal status is etched into every arch and alcove. You wander these corridors, your fingers trailing along smooth marble walls veined with subtle hues of rose and cream, feeling the pulse of history in the stone, as if the building itself breathes tales of hierarchy and honor. This sprawling complex, expanded over centuries from humble origins to a grand residence befitting the Virgin's elevated rank, mirrors the evolution of Roman domestic life, where houses weren't just shelters but stages for social performance. You turn a corner into the main atrium, the heart of the home, where a central impluvium pool collects rainwater that shimmers under moonlight, reflecting the colonnades that rise around it like silent sentinels. Here, the architecture speaks volumes, public-facing rooms open to visitors, showcasing statues and trophies that proclaim the Virgin's prestige, while deeper wings conceal private quarters, enforcing a gradient of access that underscores Roman social hierarchies. The closer you get to the core, the more sacred and secluded it becomes. It's like navigating a labyrinth designed not to confuse but to classify, where every threshold reminds you of your place in the pecking order. As you meander through the peristyle garden, the rustle of leaves and the gentle trickle of fountains create a soothing symphony, lulling your thoughts into a rhythmic calm. The scents of blooming night jasmine mingling with the faint smokiness from the temple's eternal fire nearby. Mainstream historical fact: the Atrium Vestal, rebuilt multiple times notably after the Great Fire of Nero's era, incorporated elements of elite Roman villas, such as heated baths and expansive courtyards, elevating the virgins above ordinary women and aligning their status with that of senators or even the imperial family. Their home a physical manifestation of how purity translated to power in Roman society. You pause by a bench carved from travertine, imagining the virgins lounging here in quiet conversation, their white stolade pooling like fresh snow, embodiments of an identity forged in marble and mortar. Modern aside, It's fascinating how this setup echoes today's celebrity mansions, all gated grandeur and hidden wings for privacy, but with the added twist that your fans are gods who demand spotless behavior or else. You smile faintly, picturing a virgin scrolling through an ancient equivalent of Instagram, captioning her day. Just chilling in my status symbol atrium, blessed by Vestal, though back then. Likes came from emperors, not algorithms. The light sarcasm drifts in like a soft breeze, because nothing boosts your social cred like a house that screams I'm holier than thou, complete with built-in judgment zones for any slip-ups. Deeper into the halls you encounter the tablinum, a reception area where the chief Vestal might have conducted affairs of state. Its walls lined with wax masks of ancestors not their own, but symbolic forebears of Rome's founding purity. Sensory details envelop you, the cool draft carrying hints of beeswax from sealed scrolls, the faint echo of footsteps on tessellated floors depicting Vestas symbols, the warmth of braziers warding off the night's chill. Quirky tidbit: lesser-known lore suggests some virgins kept pet doves in aviaries within the gardens, birds trained to carry messages to the outside world not for espionage, but as a fringe ritual to symbolize their chaste souls taking flight, a whimsical escape in a life otherwise grounded by vows. It's endearing, almost envisioning you feeding one such dove. It's a gentle ASMR soundtrack to your secluded days, though you'd hope it didn't spill any secrets on the way out. As you circle back toward the central courtyard, the architecture's layers unfold further, with upper stories added in later imperial times, offering balconies for discreet observation of the forum below, a vantage point that blended isolation with influence. Scholars debate whether this design truly empowered the virgins by granting them architectural agency in shaping their social identity, or if it reinforced patriarchal controls, turning their home into a gilded display case where personal status was performative rather than innate, as dissected in explorations of Roman domestic spaces and hierarchies. You feel the building's rhythm now, its halls a gentle guide through the night, breath sensing with the subtle creaks of settling stone, the story's cadence slowing like a heartbeat in repose. Light joke slips in: if walls could talk, these would probably gossip about which virgin had the best view. Oh honey, my balcony overlooks the Senate, yours just stares at a wall. The humor fades into whispers as you continue wandering, the atrium's identity unfolding like a dreamscape where status is as solid as the foundations yet as fragile as the flame it protects. Venturing into side chambers, you discover storage rooms brimming with sacred vessels, silver ewers, and golden ladles used in rituals, each item a marker of the virgin's exalted role. Their home a repository of communal memory. The air grows stiller here, heavy with the dust of ages, yet comforting in its quietude, like sinking into a feather bed after a long day. Modern parallels emerge softly. Think of it as the ultimate co-living space for influencers of antiquity, where rent is paid in piety, and amenities include God-approved hot tubs, heated floors via hypocaust systems, a luxury even emperors envied. As moonlight filters through latticed windows, casting intricate patterns on the walls, you contemplate how these halls reflected personal status through subtle details. Frescoes of virtuous heroines, imported marbles signaling wealth, all woven into a tapestry of social signaling. Another quirky fringe, ancient graffiti, etched discreetly in hidden corners, hints at virgins' private musings, not rebellions, but poetic doodles about eternal flames. Perhaps a way to humanize their divine facade, blending the mundane with the mystical. The debate lingers in scholarly circles. Did such architectural flourishes liberate the virgins by allowing expressions of individual identity within collective constraints? Or did they merely amplify the pressure of performance, their home a stage where hierarchies demanded perpetual perfection? You exhale slowly, the question hanging like mist in the garden, the narrative's flow carrying you deeper into this world of stone and status. Light sarcasm whispers: talk about home sweet home, where your address says elite but your lease includes clauses like no boys allowed or else eternal timeout. You chuckle inwardly, the sound dissolving into the night's serenity. As the halls continue to reveal their secrets, each turn a gentle invitation to unwind further. You glide seamlessly from the shadowed halls into the warm glow of the temple annex, where the sacred fire of Vesta burns eternally in its hearth, the flames leaping softly like living whispers against the bronze confines, drawing you closer with their hypnotic dance that fills the air with a subtle crackle and the faint, comforting aroma of olive wood smoke. The night's embrace deepens around the atrium Vesta, stars twinkling overhead through the open skies of the courtyards. As you join the virgins in their most vital duty, your hands mirroring theirs as they carefully add kindling, ensuring the blaze never falters. For in this simple act lies the essence of Rome's enduring spirit, a hearth that sustains not just a home, but an entire civilization's cultural heartbeat. The fire's warmth caresses your face, a gentle contrast to the cool stone beneath your feet, mosaic tiles depicting flames and goddesses that seem to flicker in tandem with the real thing, pulling you into the rhythm of rituals passed down through generations. Tending this fire isn't mere chores, it's a symphony of precision and piety, where each virgin takes her turn in vigilant watches, day and night, their white robes swaying like ghosts in the dim light, as they murmur invocations to Vesta, goddess of the home and hearth. You kneel beside one now, feeling the heat radiate through your palms as you stir the embers with a silver rod, the tool engraved with symbols of purity that glint in the firelight, a tangible link to the cultural essence that bound Romans to their roots. This flame, believed to have been brought from Troy by Ennius himself, represented continuity, family, and state, its extinction a portent of doom. So the virgins' rituals wove daily life into divine obligation, their home the epicenter where personal devotion fueled communal identity. As the flames steady under your care, the sensory immersion deepens, the soft pop of resin in the wood, releasing bursts of pine-scented haze that mingles with the earthy undertones of the surrounding gardens, the distant hoot of an owl adding a layer of nocturnal mystery to the vigil. Mainstream historical fact: the Vestal's primary ritual involved fetching pure water from the sacred spring of Egeria each dawn, carrying it in special vessels to quench the fire only if it accidentally died out, a rare catastrophe that demanded immediate rekindling with friction from sacred woods, underscoring how their duties preserved Rome's foundational myths and social cohesion through centuries of empire building. You imagine the weight of that responsibility, your breath sensing with the fire's gentle rise and fall, like a lullaby in flame form. Modern aside, it's akin to those all-night gaming sessions where one glitch could wipe your progress, except here, the stakes are cosmic, and restarting means rubbing sticks together while the gods judge your technique. You smirk quietly, thinking how the virgins must have had insider tips passed down. Pro tip: always keep extra kindling handy, or Rome's got 99 problems, and a dark hearth is one. The light sarcasm eases into the narrative's flow, a whisper against a crackling backdrop, as you continue tending, the rituals unfolding like a dream sequence where time blurs. Quirky tidbit: fringe accounts from lesser chronicles whisper of virgins incorporating flame dances, not literal twirls, but interpretive movements around the hearth during solstices, swaying to mimic the fire's patterns as a way to commune with Vesta, blending ritual with a touch of theatrical flair that might have lightened the eternal watch. Picture you joining in, your shadow merging with theirs on the walls, the subtle ASMR of rustling fabrics and synchronized breath. Though you'd hope no one tripped and caused an accidental outage. Talk about a plot twist in the cultural script. As the night wears on, the fire's glow illuminates the atrium's architectural nuances, how the temple's proximity integrated the hearth into the house's design. Open sightlines allowing glimpses from courtyards while enclosed braziers ensured safety, reflecting a social identity where domestic rituals elevated the virgins to cultural custodians. Scholars debate whether these practices truly empowered the women by embedding them in Rome's mythic narrative, granting agency through ritual mastery. or if they merely perpetuated a performative essence that subordinated personal lives to state symbolism, as pondered in analyses of Roman domestic and sacred spaces. You feel the essence seeping in now, the fire's warmth a soothing balm that slows your pulse, inviting deeper relaxation amid the ritual's cadence. Light joke emerges softly. If this were a modern job, the Virgin's LinkedIn would boast expert in eternal flame management skills include multitasking prayers and fire safety. No weekends off. The humor dissolves like smoke. As you add another log, watching sparks ascend like tiny stars, the cultural threads weaving tighter around you. Venturing closer to the ritual's core. You participate in the mola salsa preparation, grinding sacred spelt into flour for offerings. The stone mortars grind a rhythmic ASMR that echoes through the chambers, blending with the fire's hum to create a tranquil symphony. Sensory details abound, the gritty texture under your fingers, the nutty scent of fresh grain mixing with incense, the faint steam rising from warm embers. This act, tied to fertility rites, sustained Rome's agricultural essence. The Virgin's home a nexus where hearth and harvest intertwined, their identities as nurturers etched into every gesture. Modern parallels whisper. Think of it as the ultimate slow-cooking trend, where your recipe keeps an empire fed spiritually low and slow, with a side of divine approval. You chuckle inwardly, the sound fading into the night's hush. As the rituals continue, each one a call back to the vows and halls you've traversed. Cohesion in flame and form. Another layer unfolds in the vigil. Midnight offerings of libations, poured carefully to honor the flame's spirit, the liquid hissing on hot coals in a vaporous sigh that carries prayers upward. Quirky fringe adds intrigue. Some tales suggest Virgin's red omens in the smoke's curls, interpreting swirls as Vesta's responses, not official doctrine, but a personal tidbit that humanized their essence, perhaps easing the isolation with imaginative dialogue. The scholarly debate persists. Did such interpretive elements foster genuine spiritual autonomy within the cultural framework? Or were they illusions of freedom in a system designed to sustain patriarchal narratives through domesticated divinity? You pondered gently, the fire's glow lulling your thoughts, breaths deepening as the essence of Rome's hearth envelops you. Light sarcasm slips in, because babysitting a fire sounds glamorous until you realize it's like that one plant you swear you'll water neglected, and suddenly the whole garden's cursed. The joke softens the edges as you tend onward, the ritual's gentle current carrying the story's sleepy tide. In this hearth-lit haven, the atrium's design amplifies the essence, with alcoves for ritual tools and views to the flame that reinforced communal bonds. The Virgin's social identity a flame-forged beacon. As dawn hints on the horizon, faint pink threading the sky, you feel the cultural pulse steady, ritual sustaining not just fire, but the soul of an ancient world. You linger by the hearth a moment longer, the sacred fire's embers settling into a steady glow that casts elongated shadows across the atrium Vesta's walls, drawing you toward the dimmer recesses where moonlight filters through latticed windows, illuminating hidden alcoves and whispering corridors that pulse with unspoken secrets. The night's hush deepens, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the garden or the distant call of a night bird. As you slip into the shadows, your senses attuned to the subtle undercurrents of life within these walls, a world of isolation, where temptations lurk like ghosts in the folds of white rugs, challenging the Virgin's vow-bound existence with whispers of what could be. The air grows cooler here, carrying faint traces of rose oil from anointing rituals, a sensual reminder that even in purity's fortress, human desires stir beneath the surface. As you navigate these quieter passages, envisioning the Virgins moving through their days with graceful poise, you overhear fragments of hushed conversations, not outright scandals, but the brewing tensions that arise from enforced seclusion, where the outside world's allure seeps in through cracks in the architecture. A glance from a balcony toward the bustling forum, a visitor's lingering gaze during official audiences, or even the echo of laughter from slaves' quarters, these become seeds of temptation. testing the boundaries of their isolated realm. You pause in a shaded portico, feeling the cool marble bench beneath you, its surface worn smooth by countless contemplative hours, as the weight of solitude presses in, amplified by the house's design that both protects and provokes, walls high enough to shield but with views that tease the forbidden. Temptations manifest in subtle ways, like the arrival of dignitaries bearing gifts or the festivals where virgins attend public ceremonies, their veils a thin barrier against admiring eyes. You imagine standing among them during the Vestalia, the air thick with the scent of mola salsa cakes baked for the goddess. Crowds parting in reverence yet buzzing with unspoken curiosity about these untouchable women. Mainstream historical fact. Historical records document cases where Vestals were accused of impropriety, often linked to political intrigue, such as during the Republic when scandals served as tools for rivals to undermine influential families, highlighting how temptations weren't just personal failings but entangled with Rome's power dynamics. The isolation, meant to preserve purity, ironically heightened the drama, turning whispers into potential tempests that could shake the empire's foundations. Modern aside, it's like living in a high-security bubble where Netflix is banned, but you catch glimpses of binge-worthy dramas through the fence. No wonder a stray compliment feels like a blockbuster plot twist. You smile faintly, the thought drifting like incense smoke, as you delve deeper into the shadows, the atrium's layout fostering pockets of privacy where temptations might fester unseen. Alcoves perfect for stolen moments or fleeting fantasies. Quirky tidbit, lesser-known anecdotes suggest some virgins collected tokens from admirers, not overt love letters, but innocuous items like embroidered handkerchiefs slipped during rituals, which they'd later ritually dispose of in the fire, turning potential scandals into purifying flames. A fringe practice blending caution with a touch of romantic nostalgia. Picture you tucking one such token into your robe, its silk whispering against your skin, a secret thrill in an otherwise austere life, though you burn it before dawn to keep the shadows at bay because nothing says forbidden fun like flammable flirtations. As the moon climbs higher, bathing the corridors in silvery light that plays tricks on the frescoes, depictions of chaste goddesses that seem to watch with knowing eyes, you sense the challenge of isolation intensifying. Sensory details pull you in. The soft pad of bare feet on cool tiles, the faint metallic tang of oil lamps being refilled, the velvet darkness enveloping hidden corners where a virgin might retreat to grapple with inner conflicts. Scholars debate whether this enforced seclusion truly shielded the virgins from temptations, fostering a resilient identity rooted in self-mastery, or if it inadvertently amplified desires by creating a pressure cooker of repression, as explored in studies of Roman social spaces where architecture both isolated and invited scrutiny. You feel the tension now, a gentle thrum in the air like a distant heartbeat, the story's cadence slowing to match the night's languid pace, breaths deepening as temptations unfold in hushed tones. Light joke emerges. If temptations were menu items, the virgin's options would be celibacy supreme with a side of eternal vigilance, hold the sauce, or risk a burial special. The humor fades softly as you continue exploring, callbacks to the fire's glow reminding you of the fragile balance between duty and desire. Venturing into a private chamber, you encounter the remnants of daily life, a loom with half-woven cloth, symbolizing the virgin's domestic mimicry, yet threaded with the isolation that breeds longing. The room's air is still, scented with dried herbs from sachets meant to ward off unrest, but temptations creep in through dreams or overheard tales from attendants, challenging the vow's ironclad hold. Modern parallels whisper. Think of it as the ultimate digital detox, where FOMO hits hard because the real-world party is just beyond your gated community. Scrolling forbidden, but oh, the notifications you'd miss. Another layer of scandal brews in the communal baths, steam rising in lazy curls that obscure reflections in polished bronze mirrors, where conversations might veer toward the outside's enticements. Testing loyalties in the warmth's embrace. Quirky fringe adds color, Whispers and obscure texts hint at virgins using herbal infusions not just for health, but as subtle suppressants for wayward thoughts, a botanical barrier against temptation, perhaps more placebo than potion, but a quirky coping mechanism in their shadowed world. The debate lingers among experts. Did the atrium's design, with its blend of openness and enclosure, empower the virgins to navigate temptations as agents of their own fate? Or did it trap them in a web of societal expectations where isolation bred inevitable breaches? You ponder gently, the shadows softening around you, inviting a deeper unwind as the narrative glides through the night. Light sarcasm slips in, because who needs dating apps when your temptations come with a side of divine retribution? Swipe left on scandal, or dig your own grave, literally. You chuckle inwardly, the sound dissolving into the hush, as temptations continue to whisper, each one a thread in the tapestry of isolation's challenge. In these brewing shadows, the atrium transforms into a stage for inner dramas, where scandals simmer below the surface. The virgin's existence, a delicate dance between purity and the pull of human frailty. As you hover near a window overlooking the sleeping city, the distant flicker of torches mirrors these internal flickers of doubt. Sensory immersion deepening with the cool breeze carrying hints of jasmine, lulling you further into this world of whispered woes. Modern aside closes the circle. It's wild how isolation today means doom scrolling alone, but for them, it was literal walls, yet temptations find a way, like Wi-Fi sneaking through concrete. The story's ASMR whispers persist, breath sensing with the night's rhythm, as you embrace the shadows fully, ready for whatever scandals they hold. You emerge from the shadowed alcoves, the whispers of temptation fading into a tense hush as dawn's first light creeps over the atrium Vesta's rooftops, painting the marble in soft pinks and golds that belie the storm gathering within these walls, where accusations now swirl like dust motes in the awakening air, pulling you into the heart of a trial that tests purity's fragile veneer. The morning breeze carries the sharp scent of dew-kissed herbs from the garden, mingling with the lingering smoke from the sacred fire. As you find yourself amid a gathering in the central courtyard, virgins assembled in a solemn circle, their faces pale masks of concern, while the Pontifex Maximus strides in with furrowed brow, his toga billowing like a harbinger of judgment. You stand there, invisible observer, yet feeling the scrutiny's weight, as fingers point subtly toward one of their own, a young virgin whose eyes dart with a mix of defiance and dread, the air thickening with the unspoken charge that could shatter lives and legacies. The unfolding drama grips you, the courtyard's columns casting long shadows that seem to accuse in silence, as witnesses are called forth, attendants murmuring of suspicious late-night wanderings, a misplaced veil, or a furtive glance exchanged with an outsider during a procession. You lean in closer, the cool stone of a nearby pillar pressing against your back, grounding you amid the rising tension, where every word uttered carries the potential to condemn. The accused stands before the assembly, her hands clasped tightly, knuckles whitening, as questions probe like daggers. Did you break the vow? Has chastity been sullied? The intense scrutiny builds layer by layer, rituals of divination invoked, perhaps casting lots or consulting augurs to divine truth from the gods, turning personal allegation into a spectacle of communal purification. As the sun climbs higher, warming the tiles underfoot with a gentle heat that contrasts the chill of fear, you witness the process intensify, the atrium transforming from sanctuary to courtroom, its architecture amplifying the drama with echoing acoustics that make every whisper resound. Mainstream historical fact: trials of Vestal virgins were overseen by the Pontifex Maximus, often involving torture of slaves for testimony, as seen in cases like that of Licinius in 114 BC, where accusations of incestum led to executions that underscored the state's investment in maintaining the order's unblemished reputation. The scrutiny here isn't casual. It's a ritualized inquisition, designed to root out impurity before it taints the flame, with the accused's fate hanging on threads of evidence and interpretation. Modern aside, It's like an ancient version of a reality TV tribunal, where the jury is gods and the prize is avoiding a dirt nap voter off the island, or rather, under it. You smirk softly, the thought lingering like a faint echo, as the trial presses on, sensory details enveloping you, the rustle of scrolls enrolled for legal precedents, the metallic clink of ritual implements laid out on a table, the subtle tremor in voices that betray underlying sympathies or schisms among the sisterhood. Quirky tidbit, fringe stories from satirical texts hint at virgins employing purity charms, small amulets hidden in their robes during trials, etched with protective incantations not officially sanctioned, perhaps to sway divine favor or simply calm nerves. A whimsical blend of superstition and self-preservation in the face of scrutiny's glare. Imagine you slipping one into your palm, its cool jade surface a secret talisman, though it'd be ironic if getting caught with it sparked even more accusations. Talk about a charm offensive gone awry. The atmosphere thickens further as interrogations deepen, the accused recounting her days in halting tones, the group circling tighter, shadows merging in the strengthening light that filters through the peristyle's arches. You feel the pulse of it, breath sensing with the rhythmic pauses in speech, the ASMR of quill scratching on wax tablets recording every detail, lulling yet laced with urgency. Scholars debate whether these trials truly sought justice through rigorous scrutiny, empowering the order by weeding out threats to collective purity, or if they served as political tools, manipulating allegations to settle scores in Rome's elite circles, as analyzed in discussions of Roman social and religious institutions where gender and power intersected uneasily, like joke bubbles up. If this were a courtroom drama today, the defense would yell objection, hearsay from the hearth. But back then, the fire itself was the star witness, always burning with silent judgment. The humor drifts away gently as you stand firm in the unfolding scene, callbacks to earlier temptations now manifesting as concrete charges, cohesion in the narrative's tense weave. Deeper into the judgment, you observe rituals of proof, perhaps the accused forced to fetch water from the sacred spring unaided, her success or failure seen as divine verdict. The trickle of liquid in earthen vessels a soundtrack to her ordeal. The air hums with anticipation, scented with the faint bitterness of burned offerings made to appease Vesta beforehand. The atrium's gardens providing a verdant backdrop that mocks the sterility of the proceedings. Modern parallels emerge softly. Think of it as a witch hunt with better PR, where instead of ducking stools, it's all about ducking divine disapproval, innocent until proven flammable. Another accusation layers on. Whispers of a clandestine meeting glimpsed through a window, the scrutiny peeling away layers of privacy like onion skins, exposing vulnerabilities in the virgin's isolated world. Quirky fringe adds intrigue. Obscure accounts mention echo tests in trials, where shouts into the atrium's vaults were interpreted for almonds, reverberations deemed guilty or innocent based on clarity. A peculiar acoustic ritual that blurred science with superstition, perhaps more theater than truth-seeking. The debate persists in academic realms. Did the intense focus on physical and ritual evidence during these unfoldings advance a form of proto-forensic inquiry in Roman law? Or did it perpetuate biases that victimized women under the guise of safeguarding societal purity? You contemplate it in the warming light, the story's cadence slowing your thoughts, inviting a deeper breath as accusations crest. Light sarcasm whispers, because nothing spices up sisterhood like a good old-fashioned blame game. She did it, meets no, the gods say otherwise, with burial as the tea-breaker. You chuckle inwardly, the tension easing just a touch as the trial nears its climax. Witnesses retreating into shadows while the pontifex deliberates, his expression a mask of solemnity. In this charged courtyard, the atrium's design aids the drama. Open spaces allowing for assembled witnesses yet enclosed enough to contain secrets. The virgin's social identity on trial alongside the individual. As midday approaches, sunlight pooling in golden patches that warm your imagined skin, you feel the scrutiny's peak, the accused's fate teetering on revelations that could seal her doom. Sensory immersion deepens, the faint sweat beading on brows, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the distant clamor of the forum intruding like a reminder of the world beyond. Modern aside closes softly. It's eerie how this mirrors viral cancel culture, where one rumor snowballs into oblivion, but at least now, it's likes lost, not life. The unfolding continues relentlessly, each testimony a thread pulling tighter, the air alive with the hum of judgment's machinery. Quirky tidbit revisited in memory, those charms perhaps clutched now in desperation, a fringe hope against the tide. Scholars' open question hangs. Was the process a safeguard for purity's integrity or a mechanism for control? Debated in depths of historical texts on Roman identity and justice. You exhale slowly, the trial's intensity lulling into a hypnotic rhythm, ready for the verdict's shadow to fall. You hover in the charged silence of the courtyard as the Pontifex Maximus rises slowly, his voice cutting through the midday haze like a blade sheathed in velvet, pronouncing the dreaded verdict guilty of incestum, the sacred vow shattered beyond repair, sealing the fate of the accused virgin with a gravity that sends a shiver rippling through the assembled sisters, their white robes fluttering like surrendered flags in the breeze. The sun beats down relentlessly now, turning the marble tiles into warm mirrors that reflect distorted faces etched with horror and resignation. As preparations for the punishment commence without delay, the atrium Vesta shifting from tribunal to theater of dread, where ritualistic steps unfold with mechanical precision, drawing you into the descent toward an unimaginable end. The air grows heavier, laden with the acrid scent of fresh incense lit in hasty offerings to placate the gods, a futile bid for mercy in a process designed for inexorable justice. You follow the procession as it begins, the condemned virgin led away by veiled attendants, her steps faltering on the familiar path she once trod in freedom, now transformed into a pathway to oblivion. The group moves toward the outer edges of the complex, past gardens where flowers wilt under the heat's gaze, their petals curling like omens, while distant sounds from the forum, the rumble of carts, the murmur of crowds intrude mockingly, reminders of life continuing beyond these walls. Sensory immersion pulls you deeper, the rough weave of ropes binding her wrists lightly, not to restrain but to symbolize the unbreakable ties of consequence, the faint metallic tang of chains clinking in preparation for the cart that will carry her to the site, the warmth of tears tracing silent paths down cheeks as sisters whisper final prayers, their voices a soothing yet sorrowful ASMR chorus that lulls and laments in equal measure. As preparations intensify, the ritual takes shape first, the purification rites, where the condemned is bathed in water from the sacred spring, its cool cascade over her skin a cruel mimicry of renewal before eternal confinement. You stand nearby, feeling the splashes faint mist on your face, the droplets evaporating quickly in the sun, as attendants anoint her with oils scented of myrrh and laurel, dressing her in simple garments devoid of adornment, stripping away the trappings of her former status. This lead-up is deliberate, a choreography of dread meant to heighten the terror without haste, allowing the weight of impending doom to settle like sediment in wine. Mainstream historical fact, the punishment for a Vestal's breach, as recorded in accounts from Dionysius of Halicarnassus, involved parading the offender through the city in a covered cart to the Cullen Gate, where the underground chamber waited, ensuring the ritual remained bloodless to avoid polluting the sacred with direct violence. Modern aside, it's eerily similar to those slow-burn horror films where the build-up is worse than the climax, every creak and shadow amping up the pulse, except here, the director's the gods. And there's no popcorn intermission. You exhale slowly, the sarcasm gentle like a sigh, because nothing says fair trial like a punishment where the state washes its hands cleaner than Pilate, leaving fate to starvation and solitude. The light joke lingers faintly, easing the narrative's grip as you delve further into the preparations, the atrium's halls echoing with subdued footsteps, callbacks to the temptations and trials now culminating in this grim pageant. Quirky tidbit: lesser-known folklore whispers of farewell tokens given during this phase, not comforts, but symbolic items like a sprig of olive from the gardens, tucked into the condemned's hand as a fringe gesture of sisterly compassion, perhaps to invoke peace in the afterlife, blending mercy with the macabre in a ritual not always documented but hinted at in poetic fragments. Imagine you pressing one such token into her palm, its leaves crisp and fragrant, a final sensory whisper against the encroaching numbness. Though it'd be bittersweet, like gifting a plant to someone about to be planted themselves. The procession gathers momentum, the cart a simple wooden affair draped in black cloth drawn forward by mules whose hooves clop rhythmically on the stone, a hypnotic beat that syncs with your breathing, slowing it to match the descent's deliberate pace. You ride the wave of dread, sensory details deepening, the creak of wheels over uneven paths, the dust kicked up in lazy clouds that catch the light like veils, the subtle tremor in the air as incantations are chanted low, weaving spells of absolution for the executioners while condemning the soul. Scholars debate whether this ritualistic lead-up truly served to honor divine laws by prolonging reflection and repentance, or if it functioned as a public deterrent, amplifying terror to reinforce social controls over women's bodies in Roman identity constructs, as examined in architectural and punitive studies of ancient households. Light joke slips in softly. If this were a travel itinerary, it'd be scenic route to the underworld includes complimentary cart ride and eternal views. No refunds. The humor fades into the background hum as preparations peak at the atrium's threshold, the condemned glancing back one last time at the home that once cradled her purity, now expelling her like a tainted ember from the sacred fire. You feel the dread coiling tighter, a gentle pressure that invites surrender to the story's sleepy flow, breaths lengthening as the cart rolls onward, venturing beyond the complex. The path winds toward the city gates, guards flanking the group with impassive faces, their spears glinting in the sun like accusatory fingers. The ear shifts, carrying urban scents, baking bread from nearby ovens, the tang of sweat from labors contrasting sharply with the Tyrion's sanctified isolation, heightening the descent's poignancy. Modern parallels emerge. Think of it as the ultimate walk of shame, amplified by ritual pomp, where social media shunning pales against being shunned by society itself. #doomed. Another ritual unfolds en route, stops at altars for final offerings, libations poured with trembling hands, the wine staining the ground like foreshadowed blood, though none is spilled directly. Quirky fringe adds a layer. Obscure tales suggest melodies hummed during this march, not dirges, but soft hymns to Vestal, a peculiar auditory ritual perhaps to soothe the gods or the soul, turning dread into a melancholic melody that echoes faintly in historical echoes. The scholarly question persists. Did the elaborate preparations empower the ritual with spiritual depth, allowing for a form of cathartic closure, or did they merely theatricalize punishment to mask brutality within cultural norms? You pondered amid the procession's sway, the narrative's cadence lulling like the cart's gentle rock, inviting deeper immersion. Light sarcasm whispers, talk about overkill, why rush to bury when you can breed the dread first, making sure everyone's got their fill of cautionary vibes. You chuckle inwardly, the tension softening, as the column gate looms ahead, its arches a portal to the final act, preparations blending into the inevitable. In this descent, every step ritualized. The atrium's influence lingers like a ghost, its social identity now a specter haunting the punished. As shadows lengthen with the afternoon's advance, you sense the chamber's approach, dread a tangible veil that drapes softly, sensory whispers, the rustle of cloth, the murmur of prayers weaving a trance-like hush. Modern aside closes gently. It's chilling how this mirrors modern isolations, like solitary confinement with an ancient twist, no bars, just earth and eternity. The story glides onward, breaths sensing with the mule's plod, ready for the doom's embrace. You arrive at the column gate as the afternoon sun dips lower, casting elongated shadows that stretch like accusing fingers across the ancient walls. the cart halting with a final creak that echoes your mounting dread, ushering you into the grim reality of the underground vault, where the horrifying practice of live burial awaits in suffocating silence. The air here thickens with the earthy scent of freshly turned soil, mingled with the faint, metallic tang of tools left by laborers who have prepared the site. A small, nondescript opening in the ground, disguised among the roadside markers, leading down to a chamber hewn from the rock itself, its entrance a yawning maw that swallows light and hope alike. You descend the rough-hewn steps alongside the condemned, her breaths coming in shallow gasps that mirror your own. The cool dampness seeping through your sandals as the world above fades into a distant hum, replaced by the oppressive hush of enclosure where isolation becomes a tangible force, pressing in from all sides. The vault unfolds before you, a cramped space barely large enough for a person to lie down, its walls rough and unadorned, etched with the chisel marks of hasty construction. Lit only by the flickering torch held by an attendant who will soon depart, leaving behind provisions that prolong rather than preserve: a loaf of bread, a pitcher of water, a small lamp with scant oil, items placed on a simple shelf carved into the stone, mocking gestures of mercy in a sentence designed for slow erasure. You feel the chill radiate from the floor, a cold that seeps into your bones like whispered regrets, as the condemned is guided to her pallet of straw, her form curling instinctively against the inevitability. The air heavy with the musty odor of undisturbed earth that clings to everything, amplifying the sensory assault of confinement where every breath draws in the vault's stale essence. As the ceiling begins, masons shuffle forward with bricks and mortar, their tools scraping rhythmically against stone in a hypnotic cadence that lulls yet terrifies. Each layer stacked methodically to block the entrance, the light narrowing to a sliver then vanishing entirely, plunging the chamber into a darkness so profound it feels alive, pulsing with the horrifying isolation that defines this punishment. You imagine settling beside her in the void, your hands groping blindly for the provisions, fingers brushing the crusty bread that crumbles slightly under touch. Its hasty scent a fleeting comfort amid the encroaching panic, the drip of condensation from the ceiling providing an erratic ASMR drip that marks time in eternal solitude. This practice, rooted in Roman ingenuity to evade direct bloodshed, ensures the gods remain unoffended while the state exacts its toll, turning burial into a drawn-out dialogue with despair. Mainstream historical fact, as detailed in Plutarch's accounts, the chamber was equipped minimally to avoid accusations of starvation by the state, allowing the virgin to linger for days or even weeks, her demise attributed to divine will rather than human hands, a loophole that preserved Rome's pious facade amid brutal enforcement. The isolation hits harder now, the sealed air growing warmer with exhaled breaths. No sounds penetrating the earth save for the faint thrum of your own heartbeat, a solitary drum in the symphony of silence that envelops everything, inviting you to confront the mind's unraveling in such profound aloneness. Modern aside, it's like being locked in the world's worst escape room. No clues, no timer, just you and your thoughts playing eternal tag in the dark, where the only puzzle is surviving your own sanity. You manage a faint smile in the narrative's hush, the gentle sarcasm whispering, because who needs therapy when you can have therapeutic entombment? Reflect on your mistakes while the walls close in. Literally, the light joke fades into the blackness as you explore the vault's confines further, tracing the walls with tentative fingers, their texture gritty and unforgiving. Sensory details deepening the immersion, the faint echo of your movements bouncing back immediately, the taste of dust on your lips from disturbed particles, the subtle shift in air pressure that makes ears pop softly, lulling you into a trance of terror. Quirky tidbit, obscure legends murmur of echo stones embedded in some chambers, not purposeful, but natural formations that amplified whispers, allowing the buried to speak to passers-by above in garbled pleas, a fringe phenomenon blending acoustics with afterlife folklore, perhaps imagined by guilt-ridden Romans, hearing winds through cracks. Picture you pressing your ear to one, straining for responses that never come, the stone's cool surface a mocking companion in isolation. Though it'd be poetic if the only reply was your own voice bouncing back echo chamber, in the truest sense. The horrifying practice consumes you fully now, the lamp's flame sputtering as oiled windows, casting erratic shadows that dance like phantoms on the walls before winking out, leaving absolute night where time dissolves into cycles of hunger and hallucination, the bread rationed in tiny bites that stick in a dry throat, water sipped sparingly to stave off the inevitable. You feel the weight of earth above, tons of soil and stone insulating this pocket of punishment, the atrium's distant memories, its gardens, flames, buzz now cruel ironies in this subterranean exile, callbacks to a life of light extinguished by breach. Scholars debate whether the vault's design truly aimed at psychological torment to deter future transgressions, fostering a cultural narrative of inescapable consequence, or if it inadvertently offered a space for spiritual transcendence, where isolation blurred into mystic union with the divine. As pondered in examinations of Roman punitive architecture and social identity, light joke emerges gently. If this were a spa retreat, it'd be advertised as ultimate detox cave, lose weight, gain enlightenment. Side effects include permanent residency. The humor dissolves like the last flicker of light as you curl tighter on the pallet, the straw prickling through thin fabric, breath slowing to conserve air. The story's cadence mirroring the descent into drowsy dread, inviting surrender to the vault's embrace. Deeper into the experience, hallucinations creep in whispers that might be memories of sister virgins chanting, or merely the mind fabricating company in the void. Sensory tricks where the scent of bread evokes feasts long past. The touch of stone morphs into imagined hands offering solace. Modern parallels whisper softly. Think of it as extreme sensory deprivation tanks gone wrong, where floating in darkness is therapy. But here its thesis on human fragility: no float, just sink into oblivion. Another facet of isolation unfolds, scratching messages on the walls with a shard from the picture, futile etchings that no one will read, the scrape, a rhythmic ASMR that punctuates the silence, perhaps prayers to Vestal for forgiveness, or curses at fate's cruelty. Quirky fringe adds intrigue. Some tales suggest bioluminescent fungi in certain vaults, glowing faintly to provide eerie illumination, not mercy, but a natural quirk that turned burials into ghostly glow shows, prolonging awareness in dim vertigrous light, a peculiar twist on the horrifying practice. The debate lingers in academic whispers. Did the practice's emphasis on self-inflicted end empower the condemned with agency in their final moments, choosing when to consume or abstain? Or did it strip all control, reducing identity to a fading echo in Earth's indifferent grasp? You contemplate it in the enveloping dark, the narrative's flow lulling like a forgotten lullaby, breaths deepening as isolation's horror softens into hypnotic haze. Light sarcasm slips in. Talk about room service, bread, water, and a view of nothing. At least the checkout's flexible. Whenever nature calls it quits, you chuckle inwardly, the sound swallowed by silence. As the vault's reality persists, each moment stretching eternally, the practice a testament to Rome's blend of piety and punishment. In this sealed chamber, the atrium's social world feels worlds away, yet its identity shadows every breath. The burial, a final architectural statement on purity's price. As exhaustion tugs gently, sensory whispers the cool air's caress, the earth's subtle hum weave a trance, drawing you further into the practice's depths. Modern aside closes softly. It's wild how this echoes modern solitary, but with dirt instead of bars, no Netflix, just netherworld flicks in your head. The story glides onward, inviting dreamy detachment amid the horror. You emerge gradually from the suffocating depths of the vault, the imagined darkness lifting like a veil as faint echoes of historical whispers pull you back toward the surface, where the weight of real cases from Rome's shadowed annals settles around you like settling dust in an ancient archive, inviting you to uncover the lives entangled in this shocking practice that blurred piety with politics. The air lightens now, carrying the subtle mustiness of old scrolls unfurled in your mind's eye, their parchment crinkling softly under invisible fingers. As you sift through tales of Vestals who faced the ultimate consequence, their stories etched into the Empire's memory like carvings on weathered stone. Sensory whispers envelop you, the faint ink scent rising from faded texts, the cool draft of time's passage brushing your skin, the distant rustle of pages turning in a hypnotic rhythm that slows your breaths, drawing you into a trance where past misfortunes unfold gently, lulling yet laden with the gravity of truth. These cases weren't mere myths. They punctuate Rome's history with stark reminders of the practice's enforcement, from the Republic's turbulent days to the Empire's opulent excesses. You envision one such figure, Opimia, accused in the 3rd century BC amid political upheavals, her burial a spectacle that quelled public unrest by reaffirming sacred boundaries, her name lingering in chronicles as a cautionary echo. Another, Postumia, stood trial under suspicion not for proven acts but for her lively demeanor, too witty, too fashionable, traits deemed incompatible with purity, leading to acquittal but underscoring how scrutiny could ensnare the innocent. The practice claimed lives sporadically, perhaps a dozen documented over centuries, each burial a ritualistic purge that reinforced the atrium's role as a bastion of unassailable identity, where personal slips rippled into societal crises. As you delve deeper into these shadows, the narratives weave around you like vines in the atrium's garden, their thorns softened by time's distance, the sensory immersion deepening with the imagined glow of candlelight flickering on historical ledgers, casting warm pools that dance across names long forgotten yet forever infamous. Mainstream historical fact: into 16 BCE, following the disastrous Battle of Cannae, 2 Vestals, Floronia and Opimia, were buried alive for alleged breaches, their punishments tied to appeasing the gods amid national calamity, as recorded by Livy, illustrating how military defeats often triggered scapegoating within the order to restore divine favor and public morale. You feel the chill of that era's desperation, breath-sensing with the slow turn of events, the practice a grim tool in Rome's arsenal of control, linking house, hearth, and history in unbreakable chains. Modern aside, it's like blaming your bad day on the office coffee machine breaking, except in Rome, that meant entombing the barista to fix the vibes. Because nothing turns around a losing streak like a sacrificial reset. You smirk faintly in the narrative's hush, the gentle sarcasm drifting. Talk about high-stakes HR1 rumor, and you're not fired. You're filed away underground, resume optional. The light joke lingers softly, easing into the expiration of more cases, where emperors like Domitian revived the practice in the 1st century CE, burying Cornelia alive despite her protests of innocence, her cries echoing futilely as the earth closed over. A power play mask, as piety that highlighted the intersection of personal tyranny and sacred tradition. Quirky tidbit, fringe anecdotes from satirical poets like Juvenal hint at burial rehearsals not official, but whispered mock drills where virgins practiced composure in dark closets, perhaps to steel nerves against the unthinkable, blending preparation with a macabre gain that turned fear into folklore, a peculiar coping ritual in the shadows of potential doom. Picture you huddled in such a space, heart thumping against the wood, the confined air thick with your own breaths. A rehearsal that might have felt absurdly theatrical, like practicing for a role you'd never auditioned for, complete with dramatic sighs and whispered lines to Vesta. The historical shadows lengthen now, pulling you through timelines dotted with these tragedies. The atrium Vesta looming in memory as the starting point for each descent. Its architecture a silent witness to departures that left voids in the sisterhood. You trace the case of Tuccia, who famously proved her innocence by carrying water in a sieve without spilling a drop, a miraculous acquittal that contrasted sharply with the burials. Her triumph a beacon amid the gloom, sensory details evoking the trickle of impossible water, cool and unyielding against the backdrop of relieved sighs from onlookers. Yet for others, like Minutia in 337 BCE, the end came swiftly, Her burial amid urban expansion, the vault perhaps nearer the growing cities hung. Irony in the isolation pierced by faint vibrations from above, life thriving while one faded below. As evening's imagined veil falls softer in your mind, the cases blend into a tapestry of motivations, where politics often masqueraded as divine wrath, emperors and priests wielding the practice to consolidate power or deflect blame. Light joke emerges gently. If these were tabloid headlines, it'd be Vestal vixen buried for bad vibes, gods approve, ratings soar, the humor fades like twilight. As you ponder the scholarly debates that swirl around these events, did the true motivation stem from genuine religious zeal to protect Rome's social identity through punitive purity? Or were they predominantly political maneuvers, exploiting the Virgin's symbolic status to manipulate public sentiment and maintain hierarchical control? As dissected in explorations of Roman domestic spaces and punitive rituals, you feel the questions hanging like mist in the atrium's courtyards, breaths deepening with the narrative's sleepy cadence, inviting reflection on figures like Urbinia, whose 28 BC case tied to Augustus's moral reforms, her burial a cornerstone in rebuilding the Republic's image post-Civil Wars, the earth claiming her as sacrifice to a new era's facade. Sensory whispers persist, the faint echo of crowds murmuring during processions, the gritty feel of historical dust on fingertips flipping through years, the subtle warmth of fading sunlight symbolizing closure on these shadows. Modern parallels whisper softly. Think of it as ancient cancel culture on steroids, where one scandal erases you from the narrative, no comeback tours, just underground solos. Another quirky fringe layers in. Obscure vase paintings depict ghost virgins, spectral figures said to haunt the forum post-burial, not vengeful but watchful. A folk belief that perhaps comforted the living by suggesting souls lingered as guardians, turning horror into ethereal legacy, a whimsical afterlife twist on the practice's finality. The debate echoes anew among experts. Were these executions driven by a cultural imperative to embody ideal femininity in stone and soil, or did they reveal fractures in Roman identity, where the House of Purity masked deeper societal anxieties about control and change? Light sarcasm slips in like a sigh, because nothing bonds a society like burying its icons. A live team-building exercise gone subterranean, with zero survivors to complain. You chuckle inwardly, the sound dissolving into hush, as cases like that of the four virgins in 114 BC unfold, their burials amid plague and portents, motivations murky between faith and fear-mongering, the atrium left echoing with absences that reshaped its social fabric. In these historical shadows, you linger, the practice's motivations a puzzle pieced from fragments, religious, political, personal, each case a call back to the vows, trials, and descents traversed. Cohesion in the dim light of retrospect. As night deepens in your imagining, the whispers soften, sensory details lulling, the velvet dark wrapping around like a blanket, the faint pulse of Rome's eternal heartbeat sensing with yours, inviting dreamy detachment from the past's grip. Modern aside closes gently. It's intriguing how these stories mirror whistleblower fates today. Speak out or slip up, and you're buried in bureaucracy, though thankfully not literally. The narrative glides through shadows, breaths lengthening as motivations unravel, scholarly questions a gentle current carrying you toward legacy's twilight. You step back from the annals' dim glow, the whispers of buried names fading into a softer veil as twilight envelops the atrium. Vestal in your mind's eye, the setting sun casting long, golden rays across its marble facades that blend with the encroaching dusk, inviting you to reflect on the Vestal Virgin's enduring legacy, a tapestry of power, purity, and poignant sacrifice that echoes through centuries, shaping Rome's soul and beyond. The air cools gently now, carrying the faint rustle of leaves in the gardens like sighs from history, as you wander these imagined grounds one last time. The sacred fire flickering steadily in the temple, a beacon of continuity amid the flux of empires rising and falling. Sensory whispers draw you in, The smooth caress of evening breeze on your skin, the subtle fragrance of fading blooms releasing their last perfumes, the distant murmur of the Tiber lapping eternally, lulling you into a contemplative hush where the Virgin's impact unfolds like a dream unwinding. Their legacy isn't confined to dusty tomes or ruined stones, it permeates the fabric of Western culture, influencing notions of sanctity, femininity, and communal identity that resonate even today. You envision the atrium as it stands in ruins now, overgrown yet majestic, a silent testament to how these women, through their vows and vigils, embodied Rome's ideal self-guardians whose purity fueled the state's ideological hearth. Their home a blueprint for social structures, where domestic spaces projected power and piety. The enduring impact manifests in art, literature, and law, statues of Vestals adorning museums, their stories inspiring operas and novels that romanticize their isolation, while echoes of their legal privileges like testamentary rights foreshadow modern women's autonomy, a subtle thread weaving from ancient enclosures to contemporary freedoms. As shadows lengthen across the courtyards, pulling in deep indigo beneath colonnades, you ponder how the shocking practice of live burial, though rare, amplified their mystique, turning potential tragedy into a cautionary cornerstone that bolstered the order's prestige. Far from diminishing their legacy, it underscored the high stakes of their role, making the Vestals symbols of unyielding virtue in a world rife with vice. Their sacrifice is a narrative device that Romans used to affirm moral superiority. Mainstream historical fact, the cult of Vesta persisted until 394 CE when Emperor Theodosius I banned pagan practices, yet the Virgin's influence lingered in Christian monastic traditions, where vows of chastity and communal living echoed the atrium's model, transitioning pagan purity into saintly seclusion that shaped medieval Europe's spiritual landscape. You feel the transition's weight, breath sensing with the twilight's gentle fade, the fire's glow dimming to embers that mirror history's softening edges. Modern aside, it's intriguing how their legacy parallels today's icons of dedication. Think activists or athletes committing to causes, their burials metaphorical in media storms. But without the literal dirt nap, instead, they rise phoenix-like, much like the Vestal's flame reborn from ashes. You smile faintly in the gathering dusk, the sarcasm soft like falling petals, because nothing immortalizes you quite like a vow that could end in entombment, eternal fame, with a side of eternal rest, perks included. The light joke drifts away as you delve deeper into reflections, the atrium's architecture whispering of enduring design principles, open yet enclosed spaces that influenced later villas and convents, where identity was crafted through environment, a legacy of how homes can embody societal values, pure and profound. Quirky tidbit, lesser-known echoes suggest Vestal-inspired flame festivals in Renaissance Italy, where women reenacted hearth-tending rituals not with burials, but bonfires and dances, a fringe revival blending homage with harvest celebrations, turning ancient dread into joyful communion, perhaps with a wink to the gods via spiced wine toasts. Imagine you joining such a gathering, the fire's warmth on your face a call back to the eternal blaze, sparks ascending like liberated spirits, a whimsical nod to the Virgin's impact that lightens history's lull in twilight's embrace. The narrative softly fades now, historical whispers growing fainter as stars prick the sky above the open atrium, their twinkling a mosaic of memories where the Vestal's role in rituals from state ceremonies to daily devotion cemented Rome's cultural cohesion, their legacy a bridge between myth and modernity. You linger by the impluvium, its still water reflecting the emerging moon, sensory details soothing, the cool mist rising faintly, the hush of night insects chirping in rhythm, the stone's residual warmth from the day seeping through your souls, inviting a deeper unwind as impacts unfold. Scholars debate whether the Virgin's enduring symbolism truly empowered female agency by elevating them above marital norms, fostering a proto-feminist identity in a patriarchal frame, or if it ultimately reinforced subjugation through idealized constraints, as explored in studies of Roman social architecture, where the house mirrored broader hierarchies, leaving the legacy ambivalent yet alluring. Light joke slips in gently, if legacies were inheritance, the Vestals left us a fortune in flames, invest wisely, or risk getting burned by history's fine print. The humor dissolves into whispers, as you reflect on how their practice influenced legal precedents, like bloodless punishments in later codes, or artistic motifs in paintings depicting veiled figures as emblems of virtue, their impact rippling through time like the Tabir's currents. Venturing toward the temple's glow one final time, you sense the culmination of their story, the atrium, a cradle of legacy where purity's price paid dividends in cultural currency, enduring beyond burials to inspire awe. Modern parallels emerge softly. Picture today's sanctuaries, libraries, or labs where dedication guards knowledge's flame, sands the vows but with the same vigilant spirit, a nod to Vestal endurance in our hectic world. Another layer of impact, the archaeological rediscovery of the atrium in the 19th century revived interest, excavations unearthing statues and artifacts that fueled scholarly fascination, turning ruins into repositories of identity that inform our understanding of ancient domesticity. Courtly fringe adds color. Whispers in Victorian occult circles claimed Vestal ghost flames appearing in seances, ethereal lights summoning advice on chastity, a peculiar spiritualist fad blending legacy with legerdemain, perhaps more entertainment than enlightenment. The debate persists in hushed tongues. Did their impact foster a genuine evolution in social roles, allowing women symbolic power that echoed into equality movements? Or did it perpetuate myths of sacrificial femininity, the house a stage for performative purity? You contemplate it under the stars, the narrative's cadence slowing like a heartbeat in repose, breaths lengthening as historical whispers caress your thoughts. Light sarcasm whispers, talk about leaving a mark. The Vestals etched eternity not in stone, but in stories that bury us in fascination. No shovel required. You chuckle inwardly, the twilight fully claiming the scene, the atrium fading into calming obscurity where legacy settles like dew, enduring in soft, historical sighs. In this reflective twilight, the Virgin's impact feels palpable yet peaceful, their world a mirror to our own quests for meaning amid constraints. The atrium's legacy a gentle guide through time's corridors, inviting you to rest in its whispered wisdom. As the stars wheel slowly overhead, their gentle light filtering through the ancient branches that now cradle the ruins of the atrium Vesta, you feel the weight of centuries easing from your shoulders, like a heavy cloak slipping away in the night's tender embrace. The sacred fire, once a vigilant sentinel, dims to a soft ember in your imagination, its warmth a lingering caress that soothes rather than scorches, whispering assurances that the tales of purity and punishment have unfolded fully, leaving behind only echoes of resilience and quiet strength. Breathe deeply now, letting the cool evening air fill your lungs with the subtle sense of earth and eternity, each inhalation drawing you further into a realm where history's sharp edges blur into dreamy haze. The Virgin's legacies transforming from stark warnings into gentle lessons wrapped in the velvet of time. Feel your eyelids growing heavier, the narrative's cadence matching the slow rhythm of waves lapping distant shores, carrying away any remnants of dread on tides of tranquility. The atrium fades gracefully, its marble columns dissolving into mist, replaced by the comforting darkness of restful slumber, where dreams may wander freely through gardens of forgotten lore. Unburdened by vows or vaults, allow your thoughts to drift like autumn leaves on a serene stream, surrendering to the peaceful pull of night, knowing that stories like this one serve not to haunt, but to heal, fading into the calm whisper of sweet dreams awaiting just beyond the horizon of wakefulness. Rest easy now, in the arms of history's hush.